You know what I like about Sly Cooper? He's easy to relate to. He's in love with his arch nemesis, who routinely fires a laser beam at him, and one of his best friends abandoned him to embark upon a quest for spiritual rediscovery. Been there, done that, right? But despite all his problems and pitfalls, Sly Cooper still manages to travel the globe and steal stuff, which is once again the premise for Sly 3: Honor Among Thieves. As with the reviews we've recently done of the first two Sly games, we're playing the PlayStation 3 re-release of Sly 3, which is part of the compilation disc, the Sly Collection. The move to the PS3 has provided Sly some obvious presentational benefits, as well as support for those ever-important trophies, but unfortunately, even trophies can't rescue Sly 3 from the reputation it still retains. This is the worst game in the Sly trilogy. Now, when we're talking about games as good as these, worst is definitely a relative term, perhaps best replaced with least awesome. But call it what you will, there are some things holding Sly 3 back from being as enjoyable as the two games preceding it. So obviously, Sly 3 is an awesome 3D stealth platformer, as bizarre as that label may sound. You play as Sly Cooper, a master thief who also happens to be a raccoon. He's a world-renowned bandit mastermind, but he's kind of like Robin Hood. He only steals from criminals, people who deserve it, like gang members and mob bosses. If Sly were around these days, for example, he might steal from Goldman Sachs.
Okay, I know you boys like things redundant, so I'm going to give you the presentation again. This time, pay attention.
Now, Sly is supposed to be one of the most skilled thieves ever. He's the best in the world at what he does. But if that's really the case, why does he need so much help? And that brings me to one of the biggest problems with Sly 3. You see, Sly 2 added 2 more playable characters to provide a little diversity, to break things up a bit, and it did, but at the same time, the missions that were the most fun to play were Sly's. And that's when the game felt like a really good platformer and not some average adventure game. Now, Sly 3 goes a step further in the wrong direction. Sly's assembled gang of playable characters grows to include 7, which is about 6 more than necessary for a fun gameplay experience. By continuously throwing new gameplay at you, whether it's vehicular or spherical or whatever, the game loses sight that it's a platformer, or at least it's supposed to be. Now, to me, there's an ideal balance of gameplay variety for a 3D platformer, but Sly 3 overshoots it by a long way, and unfortunately, there's no trail of breadcrumbs to lead it back. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not to say this is a bad game. After all, it's a Sly game, and the Sly games were some of the most enjoyable 3D platformers on the PlayStation 2. Sly 3 is a little cluttered at times, but it's still a lot of fun, at least when you get to do some actual platforming. I mean, for me, running and jumping and platforming is fun enough when it's well done, and for the most part, Sly 3 does it well. At least, when it does it. Again, the problems with this game aren't crippling or anything, they just sort of water down the experience in a way the first 2 games didn't. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from a bad platformer, a game too insecure in its core mechanics to focus on them. Sly didn't need all that stuff, it's too good for that. And the constant barrage of new gameplay dilutes the methodical, stealth platforming the series had been known for. For Sly 3 on the PS3, the story's the same as it was for Sly 1 and 2. The game is perhaps better than ever. The only difference is those games were great on their own. Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves isn't a bad heist, but it's not quite a classic caper either.
I'm allergic to tomatoes. Slow!